I've already talked about this last year, but me and my colleagues don't have time to do upstream work anymore, at least in that amount that we are able to code. So Marcus and I will finish or try to finish the image encryption, and that means I unfortunately don't have time to keep up the work on the user visible metadata. So I've done quite some work. So there's a prototype you could review and think about it, but it would be nice if someone else could take over from this place on.
Okay, that's helpful to understand. I'm just looking at the patch series. Like, if you had to summarize the state of things, there are some questions and feedback from some of the members. Like, what is your sense of the current state of patches in your estimation? Some of these are more questions, some of these are like possibly opportunities for improvement now or in the future, or are these like, do you see any, based on the feedback, do you see any fundamental issue with anything that's been posted so far? Like, I guess another way of asking this question would be, for whoever takes this over, what's the best summary that I can help provide in terms of the current state of things and how to think about it?
There might be something missing because I only tested it with the OpenStack client. And so I mainly had the update, volume type update API process changed. There might be something missing in the API call for the volume type create. But that's more kind of how the, if I remember correctly, how the OpenStack client works is first to create the volume type, and after that, update it with extra specs on metadata. So that's the thing that was, I think, Fernando, you thought that was missing. And
yeah, I recall that.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's major which is missing, but that's also the part I'm not able to implement this because I don't have much time. And for the rest, you can download the patch, the cases, you can try it. Overall, as you can see, what are they? I have the database update, I have the API update, the client is also has also patched for the OpenStack client and for the Cinder client. And I started writing Tempest tests. They are failing. That's where I did not. That's where I had to stop, unfortunately. So
the Tempest test was the adjustment for volume type metadata.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is something that it was abandoned, but is this something that needs to be revived, or was this just a experimental?
There's another test for volume type metadata in Tempest, which is active, I think, from January this year.
Do you have a?
Wait.
I'm wondering if you have a link to that one, just so I can collect everything related.
It's also in the same topic. Yeah, that's the. That's a part. Yeah, just because I put in effort. I know this is also liked by other people. Felix Kronager-Damas, for example, from the public cloud SIG. And so I don't want this to just being stale, lying around and not being used or having any progress. That's why I'm asking if there's someone with time and someone willing to finish this.
Well, to the larger group, where are we with projected workloads and expected allocations of additional time? Like, does anyone? I don't know. What's the sense of the larger group? We definitely don't want this to linger, but I'm wondering if anyone has a particular interest or has cycles or.
So I'm kind of interested, but I won't know for a while if I'm going to have cycles on this. This would be a good thing for one of our mythical interns to pick up, though. So we can sort of keep it, open for that. I think they use.
I really like the idea because from the reviews I made, I think the patches are in a very advanced stage. The comments I made are more in the sense of things that I think that are missing and not about the code itself. The code looks already good for me. So it's kind of some things that we designed the spec that are not there yet, and stuff that need to be included in the API, as for example, the case for the volume types that were not, that we don't pass these type metadata, the volume type metadata with the volume type creation. We need to later set them manually. So this kind of stuff need to be added, but for sure, the basic stuff is already there. As for my understanding of the code. I don't know if you, Josephine, agree with that.
Yeah, I also think so.
Maybe we could do a mini hackathon and just take a few hours one day and work on it, because we could each take some API call or something, a few tests, and see what we can do. But I think it's a useful feature, and so it would be both a shame to waste the code, but also not to have it.
So I'm just forgetting some details. I remember we wanted some information in the volume type that should be accessible to users, non-admin users. But what was the original use case? Was it needed by Kubernetes or something?
It was for for instance, with Ceph, the replication's all done on the back end, so you can't really see it anywhere. So, but somehow you want to make it clear to the volume type consumer whether they're using a replicated one or a non-replicated one. So it was that was the main use case, I think, and then there were a couple other.
Yeah, in a later state. So if that feature would exist, you could also standardize some input there so that Kubernetes could find, for example, that this volume type has replication, or this volume type has so much replication, or that this volume type is encrypted, because the encryption state is also only available to admins and not to normal users. You would have to declare this in the volume type name or in the description, and that is for human readable, made for humans to read and not necessarily for machines or Kubernetes to read. But you could add metadata in a way to make it machine readable.
Okay. And do we define any standard way to write these properties, or is it up to the consumer, like however they want to write the metadata?
Right
think
now,
the
it
idea,
is. Go ahead, Brian.
no, I think the idea was that we could leverage the thing in Glance. I forget what it's called. That catalog of universal catalog of metadata. So at first it could be free form, but we could define stuff in there. So that could be part of the hackathon. What is it? I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, it's so in Glance you have this ability to define metadata associated with resource types, and Horizon can use it to find out how to populate dropdowns and stuff for particular values. So we could create a few of those as a start, or we could just wait for an operator to contribute those.
Was it Glance MetaDev?
That's right, the metadefs. Oh, wow. Yeah, how fast to forget.
Yeah, we agreed that we first should have the volume metadata ready to go before we go to the Glance site and define metadefs.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like looking at the OpenStack client change, like if we want to populate some choices, how to set these metadata properties and check it against in the API or not. Like as you mentioned, like initially we decided to be free form, but yeah, I mean that's kind of like a discussion point we can take later.
Yeah, it should be possible for the client to do a call out to the metadefs catalog and then do the validation if you wanted to on the client side.
I mean, even without the metadef, like there is an option in the command line argument for choices, and you need to enter like one of the choices, and also we could validate it on the API side. Like at least I think there are only a few properties we have that we might be interested in. So like a limited possibilities. And if someone directly queries the API, then we can do a API validation. I mean, if we want to have that in the current version or not, like we can discuss. But yeah, I was just thinking on that line.
I think we should definitely mention in the release note that, you know, it's better for this stuff to be standardized. So think about that. Operators should think about that as they populate these things.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday we had this topic about availability zones where
right.
No one's in. I mean, the administrator do their own kind of like naming, and that causes problems later. So that's why I was thinking that. Yeah.
So it sounds like nobody's willing to jump on it now. We all think it's a good idea, and we may have to get creative about how to drive this to completion.
Yeah, if my schedule was more predictable, I would be interested in it. But I know that I'm hesitant to commit to something that I don't feel reasonably confident that I can follow through on. I just don't know.
I totally understand that. I mean, I would have half an hour per week for upstream work right now. That is nothing.
But you are available at least via email, like if
yeah, of course, I can help with
something.
questions and anything. But coding with only half an hour a week is not possible. not effectively. I could also try to contact Felix again. Maybe he has someone in mind, or you can, yeah, look for interns also. It would be nice. I just didn't want to go to waste on that for discuss it here. Thank you.
Yeah, just to be clear, we appreciate the effort, and we'll do our best to figure out how to get this moving forward in some form that works for us. I don't know exactly what that'll be, whether it'll be a hackathon or someone to take it over, but I'll prioritize trying to figure out something that works. I think we can move on to Tobias if there's nothing else on that one.
Yeah, if there's nothing else, I have to go. Bye.
Okay. Thanks for your time. All right, Tobias, if you're there.
Cool, yeah. Thank you. So the first one is basically extending the existing API for listing availability zones to also be able to list the backup services or the availability zones that is available with the backup service. There is a proposed patch basically adding a query parameter where you can input what service you want to list the availability zones for. So basically, I assume I'm asking for feedback if that's something we want to move forward with, or if we have another approach for that we want to take. And basically the use case is, for example, Horizon needs to be able to list availability zones so that you can select what availability zone you want to place a backup in, for example.
Does anyone have any opinions on this? Is there anything fundamentally problematic about adding a service parameter?
I'll have to go. It looks like my comment was I need to think more about this, which apparently I did not do in the past year. But I think it was more about the way it's presented in the API than the, what am I trying to say, than the goal of what the patch is. So it was a real minor thing, really. Rajat, were you going to say something?
It's basically a copy of the existing API for listing volume availability zones. There is some shuffling around with some tests, like cleaning up and moving it to a separate file and that is mostly like the large changes. But most of it is basically copy and paste from the existing code. So it's basically presenting in the same way that the existing API is as well.
Yeah, my question was basically, right now, do we have support for providing availability zone while creating a backup? Like, I mean, right now, if you create a backup, can I specify an availability zone where it will be created?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
There's no way of knowing what availability zones are available for the backup service.
Yeah,
So there's
exactly. That's
the
why I was
hard,
asking.
it's hard to expose it to the end users in interfaces.
Yeah, then it kind of makes sense. Like, we do want to schedule our backups to, I mean, depending on where we want to, but at least that option is not usable unless I know that kind of information from admin.
So it sounds like we're leaning towards, at least philosophically, this is okay. So this can be, we could bump the review priority of this. Are there any fundamental questions while we have Tobias? He is not an easy guy to get a hold of. And we can try to make the most of this time as much as possible so that these patches can at least get some sort of definitive up or down vote.
So we are introducing a new parameter. Doesn't that, I mean, if we need a new micro version for that, then
Yes, it depends on Tobias. What's the behavior if there's nothing configured? Then
If you leave everything out, like the original behavior is there, but you can also specify the service query parameter and say Cinder volume, get Cinder volume there as well. So it's basically, it's adding support for this while keeping the backward compatibility of the API itself.
so if I go to a cloud that doesn't support this and I put the service query parameter on my request, what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think the default value we fetch is none. Like, we try to get it from the request and the default is none. So it checks like if the service option is available and it points to the backup topic queue, then lists the backup availability zones, otherwise list volume. So it should behave like that. But the other side is like, anyone not, I mean, if I don't want to like opt in for this, like there should be a micro version like binding this feature to, like, I would never know like when this service thing was introduced.
Yeah, I'm actually unsure of what happens if you pass it, pass the query parameter and it actually isn't handled server side. I'm not sure. I have the next point on the agenda is kind of similar because that was when you passed a filter that did not exist, it actually ignored it. And I don't have a clear like default behavior of that. So, but I can probably figure that out.
I think it also depends on the request schema. If we have any validation around, like a strict validation around like what parameters we can pass. I don't know if we have that for request or response or both, but it might fail if that's there.
Yeah, I was just looking, our guidelines do say if we change the list of query parameters, we're supposed to do a new micro version.
Yeah, I guess then it's easily settled that it needs an API version. Then and I can easily just introduce that in the patch if I have a micro version number that I can use.
Right, let's see. Okay, so if you act fast, it looks like you could get 3.72. I don't know if we have any other patches up right now that are adjusting micro versions. But I mean, go ahead for 3.72. Once you have that in place, if there's a merge conflict, that's
Yeah, it'll show that. Yeah, and you'll
yeah,
be
it's a
able
really easy thing to fix.
I think the last topic by Josephine uses 3.72.
Oh, okay. All right, so it's a race with Josephine's topic then.
Well, we don't know which one's going to merge first, so just take the next available one, and then we'll adjust the one that loses the race.
Cool.
Loses is the wrong word because they're both going to presumably we'll get them in. We just
Everybody's a winner.
Exactly. Yeah, that feels better.
So what happens after 3.99? Like,
Oh, 3.100.
maybe it would be a good time for V4.
Yeah, it'll be a while before we get there, though.
Yeah, we've really slowed down in micro versions. And I'm just noticing we need to update that page for 20 for epoxy.
Which page? What's happening?
The micro version history. That's that last I put in the meeting chat, not on the, I should have put it on the Etherpad.
So many
So
sources.
we mention in which release the last, like the final micro version was, so it's easier to trace. And Span was saying we're missing like few releases.
I thought I submitted a patch for this. Are you saying that this doc is out of date?
Yeah, because it doesn't include 2025.1.
Okay. Hang on. I'm losing my mind. I thought I addressed this, but I can't find it. This would be in the Cinder repository, right?
Yeah, you may be thinking of the last release. You may have done it for 2024.2.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because we had released last week, so
Yeah.
All right. But so just in moving forward with Tobias's stuff, he's going to need a API micro version bump. But in general, we have a consensus that this is a useful thing. We want this. There's no philosophical flaw with this approach that we see at the moment, at least. I can do something crazy like prioritizing the review, and I can start hounding people, and that won't be completely misguided.
Cool, thank you. And I'll basically work on that when I have, and I'll ping when I have updated the patch to include the micro version.
Okay. So the next one on the list is the broken API filters and query parameters. This one is kind of related, yeah.
It is basically the volume summary API. I actually found this. I have the patch below that to introduce the backup summary API. And while implementing that, I found that the volume summary API doesn't pass the query parameters down to the database layer at all. So it's basically impossible to do any filtering. So I assume that bug has been there for a long time. So that patch is basically to fix that issue by first proposing a patch to show that it's broken and then a patch to fix it. It was we actually caught in CI that we throw a HTTP 500 error when you pass a query parameter that doesn't exist. So basically, I changed that to be a behavior where it gives a bad request instead. And basically, I'm just asking again API behaviors, so on forth. I assume that is more correct than actually doing a server error.
Oh yeah. No, I think we never want to return 500s on purpose. Well, actually, that's not true, but no, in general, we hate 500s.
Yeah, and the reason that when we talked like the previous topic, when we talked about the availability zone API, that is what I mentioned, that the behavior now for that with the change is that we're going from a 500 to a 400. And that is for a missing support for a query parameter. So that's why I was unsure of how the availability zone API behaves when you do not give it a query parameter that is invalid, basically. But I also assume that since that feature has been broken for many years, I assume nobody's even using the filtering mechanism for that. So complaining that you go from a 500 to a 400 HTTP error is probably not an issue.
Sounds like we're all agreeing at least the argument makes sense. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, we've always been okay with changing a 500 error return to a 400.
Okay, so this is just a function of just raising awareness and prioritization, as opposed to some sort of disagreement about the content.
The only thing is the volume summary command isn't documented to take query parameters. So we definitely want it to go to a 400, but is it, so I never use this command. So Tobias, is it useful to be able to filter? I guess it must be, because you've probably tried it and that's how you discovered this.
Yeah, basically when I implemented, or the next point on the agenda there for the backup summary, that's where I wanted to filter like backups that were in error. So I was basically the same as for the availability zone API. I was mimicking of what we already have for the volume APIs. And yeah, I ran into that bug. And basically the OpenStack client CI caught that, or we caught an error in the OpenStack client CI when I implemented the change to fix the using a non-existing query parameter for the volume summary API. Basically, the OpenStack client was passing all tenants or all projects instead of all tenants as a query parameter, which crashed with HTTP 500.
So then if you apply the filters, then you can get the summary for just like your volumes in a particular AZ or something, I guess is the.
Yeah, basically all filters that are applicable for volumes when it retrieves them. For like, you can, based on filtering on status, for example, is also working.
Tobias, do you have a how are you verifying this? Like, do you have Cinder client a patch that you're using to actually pass in these filters and verify the correct behavior aside from just the unit tests and I'm just wondering if there's something larger that lets us kind of exercise all of this in a different way.
No, this is purely based on the unit tests, and based on that, the OpenStack client CI failed.
So this is another micro version question. If we're going to allow the filters on this, do we need a micro version?
We're adding a parameter, are we not? The backup summary.
Like a whole, well, this is still the volume summary. Yeah, we're adding like all the filters.
Yeah, so each addition, at least as we've documented it, additions to the parameters require bumps, right? Or maybe I'm reading it wrong.
No, I think that's,
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that makes sense.
So I two questions regarding this. So one is, I think the volume summary just returns the number of volumes and the size of the volumes, and all project or all tenants being a valid key just shows the volumes that are visible by admins and non-admins, like for a project or for all projects. So the first question is like, do we even want to have filters in this? And the second one being like, the filters were introduced in a particular micro version, I think 3.33 or somewhere. And I think all the APIs got the filtering at that point. And it is expected, like, I mean, it is expected from each API to have filtering if they support it from that micro version itself. So first is like, do we even need filters here? And secondly, like, if we add filters, like, does it belong to the micro version when filters were added?
I'm not sure. What does the actual API documentation say for this API call? Does it say it supports the filters?
No, it doesn't. There's a link, line 306 in the Etherpad.
So when filtering for the volume summary API, is it that you expect you can filter on a project and get a count of capacity or total size for that project? Is that the kind of filtering we're talking about?
Well, it's not project per se, because it's like for end users. It's basically you can filter on the status of volumes, or I assume you can also kind of filter for, I mean, the different fields on the volume that you can filter, like a list event when doing a volume list.
Oh,
So it's basically a summary API for like size and metadata and amount of volumes, summarizing that based on, I assume, the same filtering logic that a listing volumes would be.
So what's the does anybody know why you want a dump of all the metadata from all your volumes just in one place? This has nothing to do with you, Tobias. I'm just curious because we introduced that in its own micro version, but it doesn't.
it does seem
Weird because it's like
probably where we added it.
with no context. It's like, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. I mean, all the actual code logic to do the filtering is there. It's just passing the actual dictionary to the database layer that is missing. So I assume it, back a long time ago or when this was added, I assume it was meant to do filtering at least.
The reason that you want to be able to do that, or the reason that it was added, is because if you're Horizon and you want to provide an interface that lets people click on metadata to filter stuff,
Oh.
you can come up with a list of what's there. That's kind of what the
And then you could make a right, and then you could search for that. Okay.
yeah, that's kind of what the commit message indicates. That
Okay.
I don't know if that actually happened, but that's kind of what it.
So the problem is that would have been a micro version that would have been better as a like query parameter, like dump bunch of crap or not, because it seems like for a normal person that's going to be a real. So
Well, it seems like it seems like we don't necessarily have a very strong definition of what this summary API is supposed to be. I mean, it looks like it was originally for how much stuff is there, and then people added the metadata stuff to it. And now we're about adding filtering to it, which is again kind of a different use case from what it probably was originally meant to do. So I don't really know if this is even, when we look at this API and say it doesn't support filtering, I kind of read over it and was like, well, that seems not terribly surprising. I'm not really sure it's supposed to do that. But I don't know.
mean, I guess it depends on this, how much stuff you've got, right? So if you have like 1,000 volumes and you want to know how many of them meet some particular characteristic.
Yeah, that's basically my use case for the backups API, because if you have 200,000 backups that we're approaching, doing a list and pagination for all those to figure out which ones are in, or if you have any that are in the error states, is, yeah, just a waste of compute, basically.
All right, so I guess I'm kind of neutral about adding the filters to this. But since you've done most of the work, maybe that's fine. It looks like this is going to need a micro version though.
I can, when checking the patch that implemented this API back like 9 years ago, it actually, all the parameters for filtering is actually there.
Really?
And then also in the database layer as well, but same as my fix, or the thing that my patch fixes is that it doesn't actually pass the filters to the function. So it's basically been there since the inception of the API. So it looks like it was supposed to support filtering, but it never passed the actual dictionary back to the database function.
Well, it seems like from a performance standpoint, this would only be a good thing, right? So that's a plus. I don't know. How does everybody else feel about this one?
Is the question still whether it should be a micro version?
No, whether we should, well, it's like, I think it definitely has to be a micro version, but it's basically, should we do it or not?
Well, if we take a quick look at the next point on the agenda, I want to introduce a backup summary API. And if we don't fix it in the volume summary API, then, and I want to have it in the backup summary API, then that would also be an inconsistency between the APIs. And if the backup summary API were to be approved, we could just bake them into the same micro version.
I like the idea. I'm just not sure if the behavior of the filtering is totally well defined or not. I need to read through this some more. Meaning, well, I just want to look through and make sure it doesn't have any unexpected behavior as far as what am I trying to say? I don't know. It seems strange that we have fields called total count and total size that are not total, responses. But I guess if that's what you ask for with a filter, it makes sense.
So can I specify like status equal to in use, and it will only show a summary for in use volumes? Is that how the filters work here?
I think so.
Yeah, I would just assume like the volume summary is like total volume summary, but if we add the filters, it would be good to avoid the ambiguity. Like as Eric was saying, total count.
What we could do with since we got to check for the micro version, we could, well, this might be a really stupid idea. What I was going to say is, if you're using the micro version, it would show size and count. And if you're not using the micro version, it would show total size and total count. Would that be stupid?
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, but it's already kind of like that when you consider the all tenants flag
Right.
already not showing totals.
Yeah,
So
I guess maybe let's just leave that alone.
I guess I just wish we had not named them with total when we started. But at this point, it kind of seemed like it would be better to just leave it there.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Isn't it supposed to be an admin only API? Like admin would really use this data, but for a non-admin, like what would be the use of getting the total volumes and
Well, if you're doing
size?
the metadata thing for Horizon, it's not going to be admin only.
That
But also, if you've got like 500 volumes, you know, various sizes, it might be good to know how close you're getting to your quota. I don't know.
doesn't Horizon already show that?
I think from this. I don't know. I don't know, really. All right, so it looks like we need a new micro version, but it looks the idea is good, and it will preserve symmetry with the new backup summary API. So I like it, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think it's if I change to introduce that in the same micro version as potentially adding the backup summary API, that would at least have the both of them being consistent.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to do them with the same micro version. Because it's basically enhancements to the summary APIs. So I think that's fine. I don't think we need separate ones.
So for the response on the backup one, do we want to stick with the same total size and count name?
Yeah, let's leave that as issue for version 4. I mean, I think it's probably less confusing to have a confusing name the same in both places than to have different ones that do the same thing. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Are we ready to move on to the next, adding a type field to the backup API? So far, I'm not hearing any major detractions. It sounds like we can add this to the regular queue of reminders, review reminders, and things that need attention.
Now, I just want to say, looks nice, and it's nice to have the API ref additions and stuff all there as part of the patch. So these are nice patches.
Tobias, do you want to move on to your type field in the backup API?
Yeah. Basically, I had a idea of adding another type of backup into the Ceph driver. So basically, a reverse incremental backup, meaning you take the latest incremental and basically copy it together with the rest of the full back to the last full backup, and doing like a synthetic full backup basically. So you don't actually, you build a new full backup by taking the last full backup together with all the incrementals after that. The problem is to be able to support any other type of backup. We basically today only have the field that is incremental true or false. So basically, incremental false is a full backup, incremental true is an incremental backup. So there's actually no way to, in a nice way, implement that in the API layer. And I don't have a clear-cut, finalized solution for it. Basically, I'm more asking feedback if it even makes sense adding a kind of type field to the backup API, so that the incremental Boolean field instead becomes a type field where you have infinite backup types, basically.
Is there demand for an alternate non-supported backup type?
Well, it's basically my work in progress proof of concept way of having the driver do a synthetic full backup and then exposing that up to the API level. So there's no real demand right now except for me playing around.
The other reason I would think that this would maybe be useful is for people who want to run a differential backup strategy, because it could be easier to manage your sets of backups if they were actually labeled differentials instead of incrementals when that's the case.
Yeah, that's true. Or a roll up, which is, I think, what Tobias is describing. Like having some flexibility in this. I can see there being value in that as opposed to just the binary choice.
Yeah, and we don't have to go into lengths on this topic. It's basically just a quick check if it even makes sense, because I could implement that before actually moving forward with any actual usage of it. It's kind of a nice cleanup as well, but it's also a micro version, and I don't have a clear use case for it, like 100% use case for it yet. So more of a testing the waters.
I think logically it makes sense. Does anyone have any objections, like philosophically? We don't want to suggest that Tobias go and put effort into this if we know that we can't support it. But it sounds like there's, well, I guess I'm asking, right?
I think it sounds basically like it would provide a way for the drivers, the particular backup drivers, to be more flexible, but they wouldn't have to. So I guess the only thing would be we'd want some kind of standard enumeration, although to a certain extent you can't do that because you don't know all the technologies. So
we can start with just the ones we support currently, and then you can add onto that enumeration as you add support for.
So it'll have to be up to the driver to reject right, an unknown backup type or something. We may need some kind of or maybe you've already, I haven't looked at this patch, Tobias, so maybe you've already thought about this. But to the base backup driver may need a function just to an abstract function, and then the drivers would have to implement it.
So that we don't break backward compatibility and backward drivers are confused about.
But because Ceph may support roll up and Dell may call it something else, right? Like synthetic, whatever.
If you can keep that in mind and we'll propose a solution for that, I think we'd be willing to consider it. The idea is acceptable.
Yep.
I do like the idea. I'm a little unsure why you wouldn't just call the reverse roll-up a full.
I guess it's hard to basically it's hard for something calling the API to say that it wants a full backup, or if it wants to basically there's no way to tell the API or to somehow communicate to the backup driver itself what kind of type you want, except for is it an incremental or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at that API right now, thinking that we should really add differential support to it, because I think some people would want that. But that's a whole other thing. I might go poke at that at some point.
Yeah, I don't have anything else, but it sounds like migrating into a type field and then somehow exposing that to drivers is an acceptable step forward if that ever becomes.
Yeah, if you can add a type field and make it so that our existing backup drivers can function correctly by receiving a type as opposed to what they're currently expecting, and it doesn't introduce any backwards compatibility issues, and it gives us a path to move forward and adopt new types on demand within respective drivers. I think that would be valuable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And something to think about. This is sort of related to your AZ thing we discussed earlier. We'll have a kind of discovery problem with these because you'll want to know what you can request when you request a backup. We don't have to solve this now, but eventually we'll need to do something.
Yeah, that's I haven't thought about that, so that's good.
But you'd have to know so the API would have to know who the driver is. Anyway, yeah, let's worry about that later. So for now, we leave it up to documentation by the operator, because they would know what kind of backup service they're configuring and what backend they're using and what its capabilities are. And we'll have to see what we can come up with later.
All right.
Yeah, we've had discussions on and off for many, many years on how to probe for backend capabilities, and have never really decided to organize it. But that's an interesting one to think about.
All right, so then this is like, suppose we had a backup type like a volume type. And then what you would do is to figure out what you want to use as a consumer. You would do just like you would list volume types, you could list backup types.
I think one of the things we need for backup types is multiple backup backends. That was also a feature that I think someone proposed a spec for that.
Yeah, right. Before you can choose, you got to be able to do it, right?
Right now, I think all the backup configuration is in the default section, and
yeah, Yvonne was working on that for a while.
Well, and the tricky thing with backup types is that the backup type won't tell you what kind of backups you can do. Because in the case of Ceph, you can only do the incrementals, I think, if you're using the Ceph backup driver, and not, it's a combination of the backup driver and the volume driver that decides that, I think.
Yeah, forget I mentioned that. Okay.
So in summary, it sounds like with regard to all the patches that you've mentioned, we've got the go ahead to make updates, push for reviews, and try to get this to move forward. The next one is not coding. It's more of a project question, but Tobias is asking about finer grain core permission for review of subsets of the repository. In the past, this has been rejected, but I'll open it to the group. What's the?
Do we think it would actually help?
I don't know. I remember when I started working on RBD, and it was getting a lot of contributions from a lot of different folks from different places. The idea of having just RBD, because I was the RBD maintainer at that time, just having core for RBD specifically, because I was new and I didn't have like a broad enough understanding to be like a general core. But we didn't have a mechanism for this, so that idea it didn't go anywhere.
Well,
I don't know.
We don't have a formal mechanism, so it would be a trust-based thing, which is fine.
Honor-based,
right? We wouldn't approve anybody unless we trusted them in the first place.
Yeah, there'd be no actual like ability to enforce it, other than just please.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Garrett permissions are like repository and branch based. I don't think you can't narrow it down to just like a specific subset of files. But I mean, I think Eric's got a good question, because it's like Tobias would be a good guy to do this probably, but of course he's writing all these patches, so he won't be able to review his own patches. So are there other people who would be appropriate?
I don't have a real sense of what the review flow for the backup subset is like, in terms of who are the major players. I don't have a sense of that right off the hand.
It's like almost anything in Cinder, where you really have to have a concerted effort and launch a whole campaign somewhere other than in Garrett to get things to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Tobias maybe. So this is my solution to everything, right? Everybody knows what I'm about to say. So you could sponsor a festival of backup reviews and promote that like every so often. And then just there'd be a particular time people could show up and do backup reviews.
Do we want to consider Tobias as a core for backup purposes? I recognize that's not exactly what you're asking. I'm just wondering if we go.
I don't know. I mean, I've seen his name, so I'll just be completely honest because I haven't looked. I've seen his name all over the place, but I haven't actually looked at code he's reviewed to see what kind of comments he's left. So, I mean, based on the patches he's putting up, he looks like a good, competent guy, but I don't know in terms of, I would not be willing to commit right now and say yes without looking at, the feedback he's giving on reviews.
That's a fair response. Tobias, what's your take? Do you feel like having Cinder consider core status for backup reviews? Do you think that would be something you'd be interested in? Like, should we consider that? Is that something you're wanting, or where are you with that?
I assume I just don't hang around enough to push my patches forward enough. I usually kind of feel bad about pinging on IRC all the time about patches. So I guess it's also on me to be more active in, I guess, weekly meetings or something similar. But generally, we've had backup patches that sit for 6 months without a single comment anywhere. So I recognize what Eric said, that you actually have to more advocate for changes actively than just push them.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is Yvonne was very active in backups and reviewing backups for a while. And unfortunately, world events have conspired against that. So, sorry, Eric.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I wasn't trying to say that I think it should be that way. I don't think it's great, but that's kind of how it works. I don't know.
Yeah,
I have a suspicion that we're going to have a little bit more activity in the backup area over the next cycle or two than we probably have in a little bit anyway. I don't know if that helps or not. But I am guessing that there's going to be some interest in it.
But I think if you wanted to, Tobias, if you wanted to like organize, you know, a backup review party or something and just promote it on the mailing list and see if people actually show up. But that might be a good way. And don't feel bad about bugging us in IRC. The thing I don't like are the long list of stuff on the Etherpad. For some reason, that just bugs the heck out of me. But being pinged in IRC, I don't mind, because if I have time, I'll look, and if I don't, I just ignore it. So I think you're doing the right thing there, especially if patches have been sitting. And especially if I've reviewed something like 2 years ago and never returned to it, feel free to ping me.
Yeah, I don't have any like clear path forward. I just wanted to like take the temperature on the situation, so that I'm a little bit more aware of how I should approach specifically the backup part, because not the hottest topic to work on either.
Yeah, I think in summary, we'd be willing to consider it. I don't think any of us are aware of anyone more qualified than you, but it would be dependent on your willingness and your cycles and where you are with it. All that aside, though, we'll try to get these patches updated. If you feel motivated to try to coordinate some sort of group review session for backups, that would help the project for sure, especially the backup subset, which is historically lacking in attention and eyes.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I don't want to commit to anything in this meeting, but yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Sure.
Sure. Yeah. If you decide that that's something you're willing to explore, just reach out. Just let me know, and I can raise a larger discussion and
Yeah.
get some feedback.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions related to Tobias's backup patches? Anything in the aggregate about any of this before we move on to the next topic, which is different.
Thanks for working on it.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna leave, but I want to thank you all for your time and for hearing all those many points out.
You're welcome. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
So can we take like a 5-minute break?
Fiverr can do. Yeah. I'll
Or
update the infra bot thing. Yeah. Let's just break for 5. I'll see y'all in a few. I'm going to pause recording.